Have you ever had your identity stolen by your own family? I have. It started with a voicemail just after lunch on a dusty Thursday. A robotic voice told me I was 90 days delinquent on a $38,000 loan I never took out. Name, social, address, everything matched. The truth? My sister forged my signature to fund her luxury honeymoon in Santorini, and my parents, they called it just paperwork. I'm a CPA. I've managed taxes, credit, and debt for my entire family, but nothing prepares you for betrayal in your own name. In this video, I'll show you how I recovered my credit score in just 21 days, shut down every joint account they used against me, and protected my peace even when the apology never came. It all started with one fake signature. But what came next? That was real, and it changed everything. If you share anything financial with family, watch this before it's too late. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. I nearly deleted the voicemail without listening. It came in just after lunch on a Thursday, one of those heavy, dusty afternoons in late August when even the ceiling fan seemed too tired to keep turning. I was halfway through reconciling a nonprofit second quarter expenses when the buzz interrupted me. I glanced at the screen, saw the unfamiliar number, and let it go to voicemail. I didn't think twice about it. Not until an hour later, when I stood up to stretch and absent-mindedly clicked the icon. The voice was smooth, robotic in that call center kind of way. Ms. Natalie Quinn, this is a courtesy call regarding the delinquency on your personal loan account ending in 2739. Please contact Redwood Credit Union immediately to avoid further collections activity. Loan? Delinquency? I replayed the message, then again. My stomach tightened like I'd swallowed ice. I hadn't taken out a loan, not with Redwood, not with anyone. My last line of credit was from college, a subsidized Stafford loan I'd paid off 8 years ago, down to the last cent. I sat down, my desk chair creaking under me. I didn't want to panic. These things happened, right? Mistaken identity, a typo, maybe even a scam. My work laptop sat open, a spreadsheet blinking. I minimized the tab and pulled up my browser. I dialed the number from the voicemail, pressing the speaker button and setting the phone beside me. A man's voice answered after 2 rings, professional and detached. Redwood Credit Union, this is Craig speaking. How may I help you? I gave my name and mentioned the call. Craig confirmed it with no hesitation. Yes, Ms. Quinn. I see the account here. The loan was issued in January for $38,000. It's now 90 days delinquent. That's impossible, I said, sharper than I meant. I never took out a loan with your bank. I've never even been inside one of your branches. He paused. I heard typing. Let me verify some things with you. Date of birth? I gave it. He repeated it back. Last 4 digits of your social? I hesitated, then recited the numbers slowly. Mailing address on file? He read it. My actual address. Not close, not partial. My full home address down to the ZIP code. Employment listed as self-employed accountant, he added. Email address is natalie.quinn@email. Okay, stop, I said, pressing a hand to my forehead. All of that is correct, but I did not apply for a loan. There has to be some mistake. Craig stayed polite. I understand. Do you want to submit a fraud report? Yes, I do. He walked me through the process. A report would be opened. They'd review the loan application and send me a copy of the documents on file. I gave my consent, hung up, and just sat there. The hum of the ceiling fan sounded louder now, like static filling the quiet. I opened my credit monitoring app. It showed a hard inquiry from Redwood in January. The loan balance was real. My credit score had dropped 91 points in the last 3 months, and I hadn't even noticed. I stood and began pulling file folders from my drawer, old W-2s, tax returns, anything from the last 5 years that might explain this. but nothing made sense. I kept my finances clean. I was the one who did our parents' taxes, who helped Chloe refinance her car lease, who caught Mom's clerical error with the Medicare Part D form. And Chloe, my sister, my wild card, sun-chasing, Pinterest bored-of-a-life sister. In January, she'd flown to Santorini for her honeymoon. It was all over Instagram. Breezy white dresses, luxury suites with ocean views, hashtags like #HappilyEverHarper. The kind of trip no one in our family could afford, especially not after her wedding had blown past budget like a confetti cannon. She'd said it was a gift, that their friends had chipped in, that her new husband had gotten a bonus. I hadn't asked questions. I'd been too tired from running the numbers on their vendor invoices and trying to keep Dad from overextending himself again. The email from Redwood came less than an hour later, a scan of the loan agreement, password protected. I opened it, entered my birth date. There it was, a full application, filled out neatly. My full name, my birth date, my social. Employment, freelance accountant. Bank statements from my checking account, redacted but familiar. And on page 7, the signature. It was mine. Only it wasn't. I leaned in. The loop on the Q was perfect. Too perfect. My own signature varied a little every time, more rushed when I was tired, more angular when I was irritated. This one looked like it had been lifted from a driver's license and pasted into place. Someone had forged it, and I knew exactly who was capable of doing it. There was only one person who'd seen me sign hundreds of documents, who'd grown up beside me, watching me write checks, fill out FAFSA forms, sign school permission slips with a flourish. One person who'd borrowed my passport for a visa application just last winter. Chloe. I stood motionless for a moment, the room strangely silent except for the slow rotation of the ceiling fan. The air felt thicker. The daylight outside had thinned to a dusty gold by the time I dialed my parents' house. I didn't even sit down. I stood beside the stove where a pot of pasta water had long since cooled, the burner forgotten. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice floating out warm and sweet, the way it always did when she suspected trouble, but hoped to manage it with charm. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? You sound tired." "I got a call from Redwood Credit Union this afternoon," I said. "They say I'm 90 days late on a $38,000 loan." A pause, barely a heartbeat, but enough to feel it. "Oh," she breathed, stretching the single word like taffy. "That must be about Chloe's honeymoon." I blinked. Chloe's honeymoon? Well, you know Santorini isn't cheap. Travel these days is outrageous. Her tone held the same syrupy patience she used when explaining recipe steps to a child. She and Harper couldn't get approved a loan, so we helped. A little paperwork, that's all. From my living room window, I could hear the neighborhood sprinklers sputtering on schedule, hissing across thirsty lawns. Inside, the apartment felt suddenly airless. "What paperwork, Mom?" "The loan application." She cleared her throat. "They needed a higher credit profile, and your father was already co-signed on the car. You're so dependable, honey. We just filled in what we thought you'd say yes to." My free hand curled around the cool metal handle of the pot. "You forged my signature." "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless." "Don't say it like that," she murmured, wounded. "It was for family. You always land on your feet, remember? This was just to help your sister start married life right." The words landed one by one, heavy as stones. My phone buzzed against my ear. A new message banner slid across the screen. Chloe. A sunsplash selfie on a cliffside balcony. Wide brim hat, cocktail glass, captioned, "Living the Dream. Thanks again." Pink hearts floated beside her grin. I swallowed. "So you all decided I'd carry their debt without asking?" "It's temporary," Mom rushed on. "Harper's bonus comes through in the fall. The payments are set to auto-draft then. Nothing will even hit your account." I've already taken a 90-point hit on my credit score. She clicked her tongue, the sound she reserved for spilled sugar or late fees on a library book. Scores bounce back, darling. For a moment, the only sound was the ceiling fan in the next room, paddles chopping the warm air. I realized I wasn't angry so much as hollow, as if someone had reached inside and rearranged the furniture of my life while I was out. I opened a cabinet and took down a glass, more to occupy my hands than because I was thirsty. Did Dad know? He thought it was best not to bother you while you were buried in tax season. Her voice softened further, coaxing. Please don't make this bigger than it is. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. Like the permission slip I'd refused to sign when Chloe wanted her first tattoo at 16, only to discover later Dad had done it for her. Like the refinance forms she'd begged me to look over last year, until I told her the interest rate was predatory and she went to Mom instead. Mom, I said, keeping my tone even, you need to understand something. Using my social security number without consent is a felony. A sharp exhale crackled over the line, as if I'd brought an ugly word to the dinner table. Natalie, don't threaten your own family. I didn't answer. The silence ballooned. On the stove, the water in the pot rippled, catching the last glow from the window like a sheet of broken glass. At length, she tried again, softer. Are you still there? I set the glass down. I am, but I'm going to hang up now. Sweetheart, wait. The line went dead. No dramatics, no slammed phone. Just a click and an empty screen reflecting my own face back at me. Eyes dry, jaw steady. Outside, the sprinklers shut off, leaving the evening quiet enough to hear my pulse in my ears. I walked to the hallway closet and pulled down the old metal file box I hadn't opened in over a year. Papers rustled as I sifted until I found the thick manila folder stamped in my own tidy lettering. Power of Attorney, 2020. I drafted it when Mom had her gallbladder surgery, giving me access to pay their bills during her recovery. She'd never formally revoked it. Neither had I. Underneath lay a stack of canceled checks and joint statements, each one another door I'd once unlocked to help them. Now those same doors would help me seal every exit. My hands were steady as I sat cross-legged on the living room rug, laying the documents out in neat rows. Funny how clarity can arrive without fireworks. Just quiet, deliberate motion, like saving a spreadsheet under a new name. Out in the dark, a cooling breeze nudged the blinds, and the last of the sun slipped below the rooftops. I gathered the papers back into the folder, snapped the metal clasps, and placed it beside my laptop. Tomorrow, I would open a different kind of case file. Tonight, I allowed myself a single truth. Sometimes the people who call you resilient are simply counting on your silence. Friday morning arrived bright and brittle, the kind of dry Sacramento morning that smells faintly of roasted beans and sun-warmed asphalt. I parked downtown outside a cafe called Copper Cup, then followed a narrow stairwell that climbed to the offices above. Each step felt steadier than the last. I was done pacing my apartment and replaying old conversations in my head. Today was for paperwork, the kind that left fingerprints in court records, not on family guilt trips. Raymond Holt's name was etched in understated bronze beside a frosted glass door. Inside, the waiting area was small, freshly painted, and silent except for the hum of a printer somewhere down the hall. He emerged a moment later, trim gray suit, wire rim glasses, eyes that registered neither surprise nor pity, only attention. Exactly what I needed. "Ms. Quinn," he said, offering a firm handshake. "Let's take a look." His office smelled of legal pads and bergamot tea. Sunlight pooled across a glass conference table. I opened my tote and began sliding out documents. The loan packet from Redwood, my power of attorney file, a screenshot of Chloe's Living the Dream text, a printout of my suddenly wounded credit score, receipts, literally. Raymond skimmed each sheet with quick, economical movements, marking a few passages with a slim silver pen. "This isn't a simple misunderstanding," he said at last, tapping the forged signature. "It's identity misuse bordering on theft. Because the application crossed state lines, it could escalate to federal jurisdiction. A flicker of heat rose in my chest. Relief, not anger. Naming a wrong sometimes makes it smaller, easier to lift. So where do I start? I asked. First, freeze every account that still links you to your parents. Second, file a fraud affidavit with the credit bureaus. Third, dispute the loan in writing. Redwood will have to investigate or face liability. He glanced up. You comfortable making the freezes yourself? I set most of those accounts up, I said. I'm very comfortable shutting them down. He pushed his laptop across the table. Be my guest. Think of it as cleaning house. I logged into an old joint emergency fund I'd created years ago after Mom's surgery. The same fund she'd once praised me for managing so responsibly. A low balance flickered on screen, but the names were what mattered. Natalie Quinn, Marilyn Quinn. I navigated to Settings, selected Remove Secondary User, and clicked Confirm. A small green checkmark appeared, cheerful and final, one down. I moved on to their savings account at Capital Western, then to a dormant PayPal profile my mother still used to reimburse me for holiday gifts she'd claim on her taxes. Each removal felt like sliding a deadbolt into place. Raymond worked beside me drafting the dispute letter, his keyboard clacking like a steady metronome. At 11:30, we walked 2 blocks to the post office. The heat outside hit us like a door closing. I purchased a single certified mail envelope, slipped the dispute packet inside, and pressed the seal along its gummy strip. The clerk stamped it with a satisfying thunk. Evidence. Outbound. Back upstairs, Raymond filed the fraud report online while I turned to my credit. Experian, then Equifax, then TransUnion. Freeze, freeze, freeze. Security questions about the color of my first car, the street I lived on in college, my monthly mortgage. 0, thank you. Final confirmation codes pinged my phone in rapid succession. Only one joint account remained. A family checking line Mom had opened when Chloe went to grad school. For emergencies, she'd said. It still carried a small overdraft feature tied to my social. I'd forgotten it even existed until last night's search. The screen showed a balance of negative $47.29, monthly Spotify, boutique coffee runs, a late-night rideshare from somewhere near the airport. I hovered over the close account button. You don't have to feel guilty, Raymond said quietly, as though he could see the hesitation in my shoulders. I clicked. A pop-up warned this action could not be undone. I clicked again. The tab refreshed, blank. An invisible weight seemed to lift from behind my sternum. That's it, I said, exhaling. That's it, he confirmed. I left his office with a folder of copies under my arm and a small checklist of next steps. Outside, the noon sun shimmered off windshields. I treated myself to an iced Americano from the copper cup, less for the caffeine than for the ritual of an ordinary act on an extraordinary day, then drove home with the windows down, letting warm air rush past my temples. In the apartment, the quiet felt different than it had on Wednesday. Not a void, but a pause. I plugged my phone into the charger, washed the coffee cup, opened my laptop once more, and changed every remaining password. Banking, utilities, streaming services, even the trivia app Dad liked to borrow when his phone battery died. New rule. Family didn't get my logins, digital or otherwise. By late afternoon, the checklist was done. I sat on the sofa, legs folded beneath me, noticing that the knot between my shoulder blades had eased. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote, "Protect credit, protect peace, protect future." The room glowed orange as the sun dipped west. I didn't notice my phone until the screen lit up the wall. 12 missed calls. Mom, Mom again, Dad, Chloe, unknown caller. A voicemail icon blinked red, insistent. I pressed and held the power button until the device went dark. Then I set it, face down on the coffee table, and let the silence settle. For the first time in days, it sounded like safety. The silence didn't last long. By Saturday morning, it curdled into something louder, Messages pinging in bursts, voicemail bubbles crowding my screen, and the familiar sound of the world trying to spin backward when it no longer can. I didn't check anything right away. I just stood in the middle of the kitchen in my socks, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee that I'd already reheated once. Outside, the sky was that colorless kind of gray that makes everything feel like it's inside a foggy fishbowl. Rain clicked gently against the window. A pair of squirrels darted across the wires outside, chasing each other like they hadn't noticed the tension that had seeped into the floorboards of my life. The phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Mom, then another from Chloe, then Dad, all in under 10 minutes. I finally sat down on the couch and pressed play. "Nat," Chloe's voice began, shaky with emotion that didn't sound entirely sincere. "I didn't think this would blow up like this. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. You know how Mom gets when she's trying to fix something." Then a sniffle. "Can you please just talk to me before things get worse?" I deleted it without listening to the end. The second one was from Mom. "Sweetheart," she said, syrupy and sharp at once. "I don't understand what you think you're doing. You've always been so dramatic when it comes to these things. It was just paperwork." Then a pause. Her voice shifted lower, flatter. "You always make things harder than they need to be. Honestly, I expected better from you." That one I saved. The third was Dad, short and stiff as ever. "Hey, Nat, your mom's upset. Let's not make this worse. Call us." I let the messages stack like plates I didn't feel like washing. Around 10 a.m., a text lit up the screen. It was from Chloe, a selfie. She was still in Santorini, draped in white linen, sun glowing behind her, cocktail in hand. The caption read, "Living the dream, thanks again." I stared at the screen so long it dimmed and locked itself. By noon, the drizzle outside had turned into a steady, soaking rain. I tried to distract myself, laundry, dishes, alphabetizing my spice rack, even considered reorganizing the bookshelf by color. Anything but look at the phone, anything but listen to the chorus of, "What you did to this family." I kept thinking about prom. The night Chloe had a panic attack over a broken heel and Mom called me home from the hotel. I missed my own after party so I could sit in her room and braid her hair while she cried over something she forgot by morning. That night had been a pattern, my sacrifices becoming her conveniences. I'd been trained for this, hadn't I? The buzzing started again. Mom, this time. "You always keep things together," she once told me when I was 17, exhausted after staying up 3 nights helping Chloe pass a summer school course. "You're our glue." At the time, it felt like a compliment. Now, it sounded like an excuse to keep breaking me. By 2 p.m., I gave up and opened the voicemails again. One from Chloe, sobbing this time. "I told everyone we paid for it ourselves. You embarrassed me, Natalie. You didn't have to go nuclear." Another from Mom. "Do you know what you've done?" People are asking questions. I have neighbors texting me, wondering if we're being sued. "You've put a target on our backs for what? A signature?" Even Dad chimed in with a classic. "Family sticks together. You know that." No one said, "I'm sorry." No one said, "We messed up." It was all about their shame, their image, their inconvenience. I moved slowly that day, like the air was too thick to push through. I folded towels, cleaned the stovetop, baked banana bread just to make the house smell like something warm. But warmth was hard to find. The oven light flickered like it too, was tired of pretending. By sunset, the streets outside gleamed under the sheen of rain. I sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, holding the bank's printed confirmation. "The loan is frozen, pending investigation." I'd read it a dozen times already, but I read it again. The language was sterile, legal, but it meant that someone, somewhere, believed me. That I wasn't just imagining the weight on my chest. The last text from Chloe came at 6:47 p.m. "You made this ugly. Hope you're happy." I stared at the screen. Then I typed 2 words. "Keep everything." There was no anger in it, no spite, just clarity. Let her have the fantasy. Let them all have their beachside wedding album, their borrowed dignity, their hollow apologies. I went to my bedroom, pulled a storage bin from the closet, and opened the top drawer of my dresser. Inside was a manila folder labeled Family Keep. I removed a framed photo of Chloe's graduation, her in the center, Mom on one side, me on the other. I slid the photo out, set it in the box with a stack of other mementos, and closed the lid. I didn't tape it shut. But I didn't plan on opening it again either. I opened my contacts. Marilyn Quinn. Block. Chloe Quinn. Block. Dennis Quinn. I hesitated. The blinking cursor next to his name felt heavier than I expected, but then block. The phone went silent. Outside, the rain had stopped. Water beaded on the windows like punctuation marks left by something that had finally run out of words. I put the phone down, poured myself a new cup of coffee. Let it go cold again. Sometimes, breaking the silence is as simple as choosing not to respond. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes slowly, quietly, like a Saturday morning with no unread messages, no missed calls blinking red, no pressure simmering behind a polite smile. I woke to the sound of birds outside the window and sunlight slipping across clean countertops. My apartment, once cluttered with tax folders and unpaid emotional debts, felt still, peaceful even. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and stood still for a moment, listening to the sound of nothing. I checked my email just after breakfast. Raymond Holt's name popped up at the top of my inbox. The subject line was simple: Update Loan Resolution. I clicked. The bank has officially removed your name from the loan file. The application has been flagged for fraud and closed. Any future correspondence will be directed to the primary signee. My eyes skimmed the rest, but those first 2 sentences were enough. It was done. I stared at the screen, heart steady, hands calm. No anger, no celebration. Just the quiet click of closure sliding into place. I moved the email into a folder called Resolved, then closed the laptop and walked away. Outside, late fall had finally arrived in Sacramento. The breeze carried the smell of damp earth and rosemary from the neighbors' porch pots. I wrapped myself in a scarf, not because it was cold, but because I could. These days, my life wasn't dictated by anyone else's temperature. At the farmer's market, the usual crowd had thinned. I took my time browsing, stall to stall, lingering over fresh sourdough and bushels of golden apples. It was the first Saturday in a long time I didn't keep checking my phone out of habit. No one was waiting for a ride. No one needed money. No one had a small emergency wrapped in a big apology. At a pottery booth near the corner, Carmen caught my eye. She wore a denim apron smudged with clay and smiled like someone who knew how to make silence feel safe. "You look lighter," she said as I approached. I smiled. "Lighter or just well caffeinated?" "Bit of both," she winked, then reached under the table. "This is for you." She handed me a mug, small, imperfect, the glaze a swirl of ocean green and slate gray. It looked like it had been shaped by someone who believed in trying, not perfection. "I love it," I said, running my finger over the rim. "How much?" "It's not for sale," she said. "You stayed after class the day I cried about my ex and ruined half the studio floor with glaze water. Consider it a thank you." I laughed. "Well, I accept, on the condition that I never have to hear about Todd again." Deal. We stood in the quiet together, watching people pass with arms full of bread and flowers. It felt like a different kind of communion, one where no one owed anything and no one was performing for forgiveness. Later that afternoon, back at home, I opened a drawer near the fridge and pulled out the last unopened envelope from my parents. It had been sitting there for weeks. No return address, just my name in Mom's loopy cursive. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I dropped it in the trash with yesterday's receipts and wiped my hands on a towel that no longer belonged to a shared narrative. The space I stood in now was mine, every inch of it cleared out and reclaimed. An hour later, a new email chimed. It was from a nonprofit in Davis, a local mental health coalition I'd once done pro bono work for. "Hi, Natalie. We're building a new accounting structure and would love your help. We don't care about fancy credentials. We're looking for someone who actually gives a damn." I reread it twice, not out of disbelief, but because something in me had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't choosing something out of guilt or survival. I hit reply. "I'm in. Let's talk details." No resume attachments, no long explanations, just yes. That evening, while folding laundry, my phone buzzed. One new message from Dad. "Thanksgiving dinner? Just come by, no drama." I stared at it. Not because I was tempted, but because I wasn't. That, in itself, felt like a kind of miracle. I typed back, "I won't be coming." Then I held my thumb over the message thread for a second, clicked delete conversation, then block number. It didn't hurt. It didn't hollow me out. It simply cleared space. I passed the photo wall on the way to my desk, 6 empty hooks where family portraits used to hang. I hadn't taken them down in anger, just necessity, and I hadn't replaced them because what goes there next will be chosen, not inherited. I sat at my desk and opened my invoicing app. Under Account Settings, I clicked on my email footer, deleted the old tagline, typed in a new one, Natalie Quinn, CPA no middle name, no title, no apology. Then I saved and closed the tab. January's first snowfall drifted past my window like slow-falling confetti, quiet, unhurried, unannounced. Inside, the apartment was warm with the smell of cinnamon chai and pancakes browning on the griddle. Carmen sat at the table, legs tucked beneath her, sketching glaze ideas on a napkin. Theo stood by the record player, pretending to be the house DJ and arguing softly with himself over which jazz track paired best with maple syrup. None of us mentioned family, obligations, or the kind of debts you can't track on a spreadsheet. We talked about seed catalogs, the ridiculous price of avocados, and Theo's dream of cycling the Oregon coast come spring. Laughter arrived easily, like it had always belonged here. While I flipped another pancake, a soft knock sounded at the front door. No one was expected, and the mail usually came later, but I wiped my hands and opened it anyway. A small cardboard box sat on the mat. No return label, just my name in hesitant block letters. The handwriting looked like Chloe's on a day she'd tried very hard to be neat. I carried the package to the kitchen island. Carmen glanced up, eyebrow arched. "Secret admirer?" "Doubtful," I said, slicing through the tape with a butter knife. Inside lay tissue paper the color of old pearls, and nested in the center, a silver bracelet, thin, slightly tarnished, engraved with a row of tiny forget-me-nots. I hadn't seen it in more than a decade. I'd slipped it onto Chloe's wrist before her first winter dance because she swore jewelry would make her brave enough to socialize. She'd promised to return it in the car ride home, but the bracelet had never found its way back. Truth be told, I'd stopped missing it years ago. Carmen touched the edge of the box. "Pretty." "It was," I said, then closed the flaps and set it on a shelf beside a bowl of winter oranges. I didn't put the bracelet on, I didn't throw it away either. Some things could exist without needing a place on my wrist or in my history. We ate until plates were scattered with crumbs and syrup smears. Theo offered to wash the dishes. Carmen topped off mugs with steaming chai. Snow kept falling outside, soft and certain. After they left, hugging me in the doorway, promising next time to bring scones, I lingered in the hush they'd left behind. I opened my journal, the leather one I'd started the week after the loan fiasco began. The first pages were cramped with figures and strategy. Later ones loosened into sentences that sounded more like breathing. I wrote, "Not everything broken needs fixing. Some pieces belong to the past, and the past can keep them." The room felt lighter after the words settled on the page. I walked to my desk, unlocked my phone, and scrolled to the voicemail folder labeled Family. Only one message remained, Mom's sharp, wounded tirade from the day the accounts froze. I pressed play once more, heard the brittle edge in her tone, then tapped delete. The screen asked if I was sure. I was. Outside, snow began to blanket the street in clean, forgiving white. No tire tracks yet, no footprints, just possibility. I set my phone face down, brewed one last cup of tea, and curled into the armchair by the window. The unopened package rested quietly on its shelf. Neither invitation nor apology, simply proof that stories keep traveling even after we step off the ride. Some debts get paid, some get passed on, and some we simply walk away from. That's its own kind of justice. Some debts we repay, others we release. That morning, as snow blanketed the street outside and laughter from brunch still lingered in the air, I finally felt free. Not because they apologized, but because I stopped needing them to. Families are complicated. We love, we forgive, we carry more than we should. But sometimes, real peace comes not from fixing what's broken, but from choosing what we no longer carry. If this story reminded you of something you've walked away from, or something you've reclaimed for yourself, I'd be honored if you shared it. There's quiet strength in knowing when enough is enough. And if this story spoke to you and you believe in quiet victories, personal growth, and stories that matter, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead, and I'd be honored to share it with you.